call to order this Independent Ethics Board meeting. The public meeting of the City of Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board is now called to order on this day, Tuesday, June 20th, 2023, at 4:01 p.m. The board members are present here at City Hall along with members of the public. With the assistance of the Communications Department and the Information Technologies Department, this meeting is live streamed on the Ethics Board website and we are recording it for future reference. There is a delay with online communications. We should all be patient. As always, we thank those members of the City of Tallahassee for their support. For those attending the meeting online, please make sure your microphone is muted. Last week, we asked that the public to make a request by email to ethics@talgov.com by 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting if they wish to speak online on agenda or non-agenda items. Those who have submitted their names will be given a chance to speak as scheduled. For those of you who wish to make a public comment, please complete the speaker request form and forward it to our administrative specialist, Ms. Tester Leverson Green. Speakers will be given 3 minutes in accordance with the board's bylaws. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we can do roll call, please.
Carlos Ray. Kirsten Costa.
Here.
Ernie Payne.
Here.
Patrick Kelly.
Here.
Rika Calhoun.
Here.
Adam Commissar.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we will do approval of the minutes for the May 16th, 2023 meeting. Board members, has everyone received the agenda and supporting documents and had a chance to read them? Any questions or corrections about the meeting minutes? If none, if someone would like to move.
So move.
Mr. Kelly moves and Ms. Calhoun seconds. All in favor of approving? Any opposed? Next, do we have any public comment on agenda or non-agenda items?
Yes, we have one. Wilcox, lobby registration, non-agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. I'm Ben Wilcox with the Ethics Reform Coalition, Citizens for Ethics Reform. I wanted to brief board members on what's been going on with the lobby registration issue, which the board worked so hard on a few years ago. And first, a little history for the new board members. In January of 2020, the Tallahassee Democrat published a series of articles documenting the fact that there were individuals who were being paid to influence city government policy, but were not registering as lobbyists with the city. The articles highlighted a problem with the city's lobby registration ordinance that contains a circular definition of a lobbyist. Essentially, it says you are a lobbyist if you are paid to lobby city government. The ordinance creates a loophole that allows someone who is lobbying the city to avoid the lobbyist registration requirement by claiming they are a consultant, not a lobbyist. The flawed registration requirement was also on display in the federal corruption trial of former City Commissioner Scott Maddox and his business partner, Paige Carter Smith. Throughout the trial, we heard how clients like Uber were directed to hire Paige as a lobbyist if they wanted Maddox's help on an issue. During all that time, Paige Carter Smith never registered as lobbyist for the city. And during that time, she was also serving as director of the Downtown Improvement Authority, which would have been a conflict of interest if she had been a registered lobbyist with the city. So the Ethics Board recognized that the flawed lobby registration requirement was a problem. And as you have a responsibility under the charter to recommend ethics policy to the City Commission, the board worked for 2 years to develop a lobby registration ordinance that would capture the unregistered lobbying that was going on. The purpose of the ordinance was to require people who are being paid to influence city policy to register and disclose their clients and compensation within a range. The reason why we want lobbyists to register is so the public can see the forces that are being paid to work behind the scenes and beneath the surface to shape public policy. To make a long story short, the board sent the proposed lobby registration ordinance to the city in 2022. The city commission took it up in early 2023. And I have those wrong? 22, in early 2022, and rejected it with little discussion. One of the main reasons that was cited was the fact that Leon County and Blueprint have similar registration requirements and the definitions of lobbying, so the city wanted to keep that consistency. So then in September of last year, the city brought up its own lobby reform, or as I call it, lobby deform ordinance. The ordinance completely ignored the earlier stated desire to have consistency between the city, the county, and Blueprint. Instead, the ordinance raised the fee for registering to lobby as a city lobbyist from $25 per client to a once-a-year fee of $500. It did away with the requirement that lobbyists report their compensation, something that is still required by the county and the state. And it prohibited convicted felons from lobbying for 10 years after they get out of prison, ostensibly to keep Scott Maddox from registering as a lobbyist when he got out of jail, as if he would want to register as a lobbyist when he could just claim to be a consultant and not have to pay the $500 fee and disclose his clients. So now we're halfway through the year, and I did some research to see what's going on with lobby registrations for the city. On June 14th, there were 4 registered lobbyists with the city of Tallahassee. Last year at this time, there were 23 registered lobbyists. Now, Peter Butzine tells me that Mayor Daley explains the drop in registered lobbyists on the permitting process being so streamlined now that developers don't need to hire lobbyists anymore. To my way of thinking, the drop in registered lobbyists means more lobbyists are using the consultant loophole to avoid paying the fee and working in the background without disclosing their clients. And since I do believe you have jurisdiction over the mayor and city commissioners when they are working on Blueprint, here's something else I found. There are currently no registered lobbyists for Blueprint. In fact, as far as I can tell, there's only been one registered lobbyist for Blueprint ever. It was Tall Timbers Research, but they no longer have a registered lobbyist. Does anyone believe that with all that Blueprint money being allocated, there is no lobbying going on that agency? So that's my report, and I don't know what you want to do with this information. I understand if you're reluctant to propose a new lobby registration ordinance for the commission to consider. I do think you could justify doing so by the fact that the city adopted its own lobby deform ordinance last year, and it is clearly acting as a disincentive for people to register to lobby. Thank you.
So now it's the ethic officer's report.
Yes, Madam Chair, and you have it on agenda item 6. It says during this period, we completed the annual ethics refresher online course. We conducted ethics training for new employees and a briefing for new member orientation, which is different. We maintained our administrative duties, conducted meetings with the board and vice chair, and responded to ethics complaints. In addition, we prepared material for this meeting, reviewed the strategic plan, created strategies for promoting the campaign contribution refund program, and that last part was anticipation of presenting to the commission, but that did not occur. With regard to the budget, the bottom line is that we still have $172,000 available at the time this was taken, and we have a little less than 4 months left. July, August, September. Yeah, a little less than 4 months left in the fiscal year, so we should be okay. I do not want to ever overspend. Any questions about anything you see in the budget?
Just as a reminder, that money at the end of the fiscal year still stays, or does it go back to nil?
We start over. We don't get rewarded for being.
Fiscally responsible.
We get spanked if we don't. Monthly issue report, there were 2 that were reporting. The complainant says for the one on 52723 hotline, it's not an ethics complaint. The complainant says that city employee entered her mother's place of work and threatened to fight her mom in front of her 7-month-old son. I forwarded this to the supervisor over employee and labor relations. I actually received a call from HR, and they told me they were looking into it further. So I recommended closing this one. On 6/8/2023, it also was hotline. It was not ethics violation. City employee called to say that he was wrongly terminated. He filed a workplace violence complaint and it was closed. He met with management and insisted they take additional action. At his own admission, he left the meeting with management before it was finished. He was immediately terminated without completing his probationary period. I spoke to the employee and labor relations supervisor, human resource interim director, and the human resource interim director told me he met with this individual for an hour. So they put some time and interest into the individual. You know, I don't know all the facts of it. I just know it's not within our jurisdiction. And so it's left up to the city to do whatever they thought was appropriate. And I recommend closing this one. So I'm recommending that the board to vote to close both of these.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kelly makes a motion and Mr. Susan seconds. All those in favor of recommending closing the monthly issue report, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those are both closed.
Okay, number 7, general update. A few things quickly. One of them is we want to keep an eye on what's going to happen with the city commission. They're talking about opening the city charter to make changes, and that can be good or bad. But I just wanted to make you aware of it. And according, you know, and I'm giving you what I read in the paper, honestly. According to the paper, it's usually done about every 10 years. It's been more than 10 years, and I know they've been talking about it for a while. There are things that we discussed, asking them to address, but I don't, from what I recall, they didn't approve the things that would impact that. It could still impact us, so it's just something we want to stay on top of. Second, you have 2 choices, according to Ms. Tasker Leverson Green. You can send her a very good picture of you for the annual report or come dressed to take a picture next week. So if you send us a picture and we don't like it, we're going to take a picture when you get here. So we need a nice professional one for the annual report. She started working on that for me. Appreciate that. And just a report on the training. And I know the public didn't get to see it. If you'd like to see it, I can actually send you a link to it so you can see what we did with the training. The feedback from the annual ethics training, they're still doing it, but it's gone very well. In fact, I got up in my car today and was headed into the building. One lady said, "Floyd," and I looked up, and the lady by her said, "I really like that training. It was relevant." And then I had a cousin who went to church with my 2 sisters. He stopped both of them to tell them about the training, how professional it was, and that he learned things. And then he showed them a picture. He took a screenshot to show them. He was so proud of it. But wherever I've gone, I've gotten good feedback, not just because of the professionalism, but because it relates. And it really was strictly an ethics course. I wasn't trying to hit home or anything, but I know it did. And it touches on leadership. It touches on employees. And that was important because when I do training with leadership, they say the employees need it. And when I do it with employees, they tell me leadership need it. So there was a message in here for everybody. And I was trying to influence the culture of the organization when it comes to accountability and not just give them another ethics class. Next year, we're going to consult with Chief Kelly on decision-making. And we have some ideas for that, but Ms. Leverson Green will be getting with you soon because we're going to start work on that so that we don't have to work as hard this time around, but we're looking forward to that. And then, and this will lead into the next thing. But when we first brought recommendations to the city commission. We had a long list of things we brought to the city commission, and we received a lot of input from the coalition. And part of the reason we did that, and I did that myself, was because I found that when we came to meetings, we talked about change, but we couldn't define it. And so I went to them and they gave some concepts and ideas, which I shared with the board. Honestly, I didn't expect the board to adopt everything they said, but they did. And since that time, and what's relevant is that since that time, I had the opportunity to go to a couple conferences. One of them, like I told you before, was represented over 400 different offices. And what I've learned is a lot of the things that we touched on or touch on in our recommendations are issues and concerns that people have nationwide. It's not about the coalition. It's just about what's best for our community. And even in this one, and can I go ahead and go into number 8? The recommendation concerning whistleblower protection. One of the things I heard is that this was pushed by the coalition. And the sad part about that is that people who think that way miss the message. And if had I gone before the commission, that was one of the first things I was going to address, that this came from the board and that it is a national issue and not just a local issue. And in our presentation, we were going to show how relevant it is. But it was, I was able to get it on the agenda. Then I got a call when they were getting ready to set it up on the agenda, and I was asked to modify it just a little bit because the perception was I wrote it saying that the Inspector General agreed with what we were recommending. I contacted the Inspector General and he basically said, I don't see anything that's inaccurate, but we worked together to make a very minor change to make sure it didn't say that. Because from my perspective, we need to present what we present, and whatever people agree with or disagree with, they just need to state it. Everybody just needs to be professional. That's my perspective. So we made the modification and we thought that was going. But then I got a call from the city manager and he said that the city attorney's office wanted to write a response and they didn't have time to do that. So it was pulled in order to give city attorney's office time to write a response. And the city attorney contacted me directly and volunteered to contact our board attorney. And because she just wanted to make sure, this was a professional exchange and not attorney against attorney, et cetera. And that's the focus here today. And John's going to speak to it, but the focus is that there is a gap where whistleblower is not covered when it comes to the city commission. And whether it's us or somebody else, that gap needs to be filled. And so that's been our discussion. But John has looked into it deeper and looked into it deeper even while we were sitting here. He showed me something relevant. So I just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork on how we got to where we are. So John can take it from there.
Okay. So this is an issue we've obviously been working on for about 18 months. And we were going to go to the city commission last Wednesday. And it was pulled the day before. We received a memorandum from the city attorney the day following regarding section 166.021 subsection 4, which addresses how city commissions may amend the charter via ordinance, and more specifically when they cannot. And in fairness, this is a concern that was raised by the city attorney in February of 2022. So this is not new. This is a concern she's had since day one that we have been trying to work through. Kind of going back on how we got here, I think the issue was, there's two issues. And if I could probably address number 9 in this discussion because it goes hand in hand, the retribution and retaliation for ethics complaints. I think one of the reasons we have discussed possibly having some type of whistleblower protections is that there is no protection against retribution or retaliation if somebody brings an ethics complaint. And I think for that reason, some individuals may be hesitant to bring a complaint to us. Now, we do accept anonymous complaints and we then bring that to the board, self-initiate. So there is somewhat of a workaround, but there's concern that some people may just be, they don't even want to do the anonymous complaint because they're so fearful that they'll lose their job. So we had proposed when we met with the city commission during workshop in February of 2022 that possibly we have a very limited scope. The Inspector General, actually, we've been talking about this issue since I first started in 2019. And following that, the city adopted a new ordinance creating the Office of the Inspector General, which created whistleblower procedures. So there would be administrative remedies for somebody bringing a complaint to exhaust before they can file a lawsuit. That was a recommendation that we had made, saying somebody needs to do this. If it's not us, somebody. And they made it the Inspector General, which I think was a very smart move for them. And I think I think he's doing a very good job in setting this. The issue, however, is that he does not have jurisdiction over the entire city. He has no jurisdiction over the mayor or city commissioners, and he has no jurisdiction over their staff people, and he has no jurisdiction over his office. So if somebody were to file a complaint if somebody were to file a whistleblower complaint against one of the city commissioners, they can't file it with the Inspector General. There's no place to go. So I think our proposal was that, look, we're not looking to take over, expand, we're just going to fill in that gap. In a lot of areas, an ethics complaint is going to fall within the definition of a whistleblower. The issue I like to, so if, kind of go back to 112.3188, what is, well, I got actually better. See? Bill. Hold on a second. I brought my other notes. It's not in your packet.
And I can't help you.
Well, I guess I don't have it. So, but there's protected disclosures under the statute. And we all know the laundry list of issues where they talk about an act of gross mismanagement, malfeasance, misfeasance, gross waste of public funds, or gross neglect of duty. The other issue is an allegation that the person has violated or suspected of having violated federal, state, or local law, rule, or regulation that thereby creating and presenting a substantial and specific danger to the public's health, safety, or welfare. So I've kind of used those two provisions and looked at our ethics code through that prism to say, okay, which violations of the ethics code would also fall within these definitions. Misuse of public position, in a lot of cases, would be considered malfeasance or misfeasance. So I would say that a whistleblower protection could be triggered under state statute. Accepting a gift or soliciting a gift, probably not. I mean, I've tried to see where that would apply. It is a violation of a local law, but there's a second part of that first provision. It has to create a substantial and specific danger to the public's health, safety, or welfare, and that is hard to do. So we have proposed, really, I think a lot of our discussions have been just where we're already investigating an issue, we would create these administrative remedies within our process so these individuals have a place to go since they can't go to the Inspector General. The issue raised by the city attorney in the memo that you received that was issued Thursday is that doing so would violate section 166.021 subsection 4, which prohibits a lot of things, but specifically the primary issue, I think she's got the, it says, on my response, I took the statute and I bolded it because there's a big word salad here. So I bolded the stuff that applies to us. Nothing in this act shall be construed to permit any changes in a municipal charter which affect matters prescribed by the charter relating to an appointive board. The city attorneys are of the opinion that we are an appointive board pursuant to the statute. I tend to agree. The question is, what is considered to be a matter prescribed by the charter? She provided also in her opinion, an attorney general opinion 92 35, which was the Jacksonville Police and Fire Pension Board of Trustees. I thought what I found very helpful is actually one of the footnotes. You go to footnote number 3, it cites an Attorney General position 84-12, and it defines the word matter. It says a matter is that with regard to or about which anything takes place or is done. And that's not very helpful, but it does say that the word is supposed to be interpreted broadly. So, so the question is, based on the existing charter language, would providing us to follow whistleblower administrative remedies, that process, violate that statute because it's affecting matters prescribed by the charter? Now, I did want to point out that I've looked at other jurisdictions to see how they handle it. Tallahassee is really one of 5 jurisdictions in the state that have a real extensive ethics board or a commission and whatnot. There's Tallahassee. The other ones are Jacksonville and Naples, the cities of Jacksonville, Naples, the county of Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach. Jacksonville's unusual, so let me come back to that. Naples has a, yes, okay. So I think there's something in the packet, it's a 5-page, it says whistleblower and ethics comparing jurisdictions. And so, but essentially, Naples, Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach rate their ethics boards or ethics commissions by charter. They do not explicitly give them whistleblower abilities in their charter, but they do give them whistleblower abilities by ordinance. So what we're asking is consistent with those 3 jurisdictions. In Jacksonville, they have specifically limited whistleblower to the Inspector General. However, 2 differences. The Inspector General is truly independent. They do have jurisdiction over their city council members in Jacksonville. So there is no gap in coverage. But 2, more significant, is the ethics office and the Inspector General's office are essentially one office. They work together on everything. So, so the ethics office indirectly is managing that issue. Another issue that I think we've discussed in the past, and I mentioned it in my response, is an Attorney General opinion that we've kind of looked at in the past. And it was this Attorney General opinion 2010-48, where the Attorney General opined on whether the Palm Beach County Commission on Ethics could receive whistleblower complaints. The Inspector General already did. The Attorney General stated that they could. It was granted by ordinance. It's important to distinguish here that they did not ask specifically the question on whether 166.021 subsection 4 prohibited that. They simply said, can 2 entities within the city have whistleblower abilities? And they said, yes, you could assign it to both of those offices equally. So, so while that issue's been tangentially addressed by the Attorney General's office, I would not consider that to be, well, 1, Attorney General opinions are not binding anyways, but 2, I wouldn't even really say that's on point because it didn't address the issue that was raised by the city attorney. There is another opinion that I've just identified, and so there's, when I went through and did the research starting last Thursday and mostly Friday and then a little bit over the weekend yesterday, there's about 21 Attorney General opinions since the 70s when they adopted Chapter 166. I think 1973, they adopted Chapter 166. There's been about 21 opinions that specifically address with 166.021 and all of its subsections. And most of them don't really apply to us. There is a case from 2009, the city of Winter Park, where they have an appointive board. And the charter provides that the vacancies will be filled by the mayor, but it does not provide for how those vacancies, or if there's a vacant, hold on. The positions are filled by the mayor. It doesn't provide for how those seats are filled if somebody were to resign and a vacancy occurred. So the city wanted to adopt an ordinance that said, we'll fill the vacancy, for the remainder of that term, and then the mayor will go back to appointing as is required by the charter. The Attorney General opinion said that that would be fine because it didn't conflict with what was in the charter. So that I think is an issue that I think would say that we could get these abilities because it doesn't contradict anything in the charter. I would also note that the charter is pretty broad in the powers that are given to us. We have the ability to investigate ethics code violations and levy fines. And we have the ability to adopt procedures in doing so. We would be investigating complaints. We're asking about putting in place procedures, so I would say we're already authorized by charter to do so. That being said, even if you said maybe that doesn't necessarily address whistleblower, it doesn't contradict us getting the whistleblower abilities. Furthermore, there's a case out of Miami that I'm always citing, and it's somewhere here. It's got a funny name, v. City of Miami, where they essentially said, and there's a long history that, let me bring this up, a case from the Florida Supreme Court where they said the whistleblower statutes to be read, it's supposed to be liberally construed and read very broadly to provide whistleblower protections to people making complaints. And in that case out of Miami, there was an individual, I think we've discussed it here previously. They went to a city commission meeting and they did their 3 minutes public comment, and they made a complaint to the city commission. And they claimed that that was them making an official whistleblower complaint, and the city filed a motion for summary judgment. It was granted. It was then appealed, and the court said that, no, that was sufficient because he made the complaint to a body that was not the appropriate local official, which would be like the manager or the inspector general, but it was made to a body that had investigative authority. So anybody that has the ability to investigate complaints becomes a recipient of whistleblower complaints, whether it's designated or not. And that's the opinion out of Miami. So that being said, I think the argument we could have here is that if we were to not adopt these procedures for whistleblower exhausting administrative remedies, somebody can make a complaint to us and we could say, well, we can't touch it. It's not our thing, and the inspector general can't touch it. So I would argue at that point, the person could just file a lawsuit, which I think was the whole purpose of what we wanted to try to avoid. So I think there is a benefit to the city that we try to keep this out of the courts and try to handle it in-house. And I think that really that's ultimately our goal, is that I think we could be helpful by filling in a gap that exists. But also I think it's beneficial, whereas people that may want to bring in a complaint feel like they have no protections, and really they do not currently. This gives them a little peace of mind in that regard. So I think the city attorney raises some very valid concerns. And yeah, I may not agree with her, but I may be wrong. And that's why I think that I think it would be a wise decision for this board to seek an advisory opinion from the Attorney General's office. So we can kind of get to this, since I can't find anything that's directly on point regarding this issue. This one case I just said kind of touches on it, but it's dealing with filling vacancies when it's not addressed. I would like to see if the Attorney General, because one thing that's interesting is that if the city attorney's opinion is correct and we can't do this, this affects 4 other jurisdictions around the state that have been doing this for years. So I'd be kind of interesting to find that out. So I do think there is a need to seek this opinion. I think the Attorney General's office would say, yeah, this is an issue that doesn't deal just with Tallahassee, but deals all throughout the state. We may want to address it. So when a board issues a request for an opinion from the Attorney General, unlike other local governments, they like it to be requested by a majority of the body, not just one member or the attorney. So, and for local boards and commissions, they like the attorney for that board or commission to write an opinion accompanying the request. So obviously I couldn't do that by today, and we don't have a meeting in July. So what I would recommend is that when we return in August, we could vote at that time to request an opinion from the Attorney General. We would put together a resolution that you would vote on, and then we would sign it by the chair and submit that with the request. They either request a resolution or minutes. I figure a resolution would be easier. And then my opinion would be prepared by then. I would try to get it to you in advance of the meeting so we could edit at the meeting. So we present it as this board feels is appropriate. And then I think at that point, we could figure out whether we can move forward directly with an ordinance or whether this does need to go as a referendum for the voters. And then at that point, we would want to readdress and figure out how to make that take place. So that's really where I am on this issue. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them, but.
Mr. Pink?
One thing that strikes me about, in the city attorney's opinion that a referendum is needed. I think back to 2020, the auditor or the inspector general's office was created. At that time, the city charter provided for 4 appointed officials, including the city auditor. And by ordinance in 2020, the inspector general's office was created. City auditor Dennis Sutton was made the inspector general, thereby having a huge expansion of authority, of legal authority, including whistleblower protection. But no referendum happened at that point. This was all done by city auditor, by ordinance. So I'm just wondering, maybe this is not relevant or not, but it strikes me that we're asking for a much smaller increase in our duties. And a referendum is called for according to the city attorney. What is the difference here? Other than that, I see that we are an appointed board. That may be the answer.
That is the answer.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we're an appointed board. And so the language about matters prescribed by the charter only applies to appointed boards. It doesn't apply to charter officers.
The inspector general's office is the office of an appointed official.
But it does not appear that anything they adopted conflicted with what the charter already assigned to the city auditor. It just expanded on the authority.
Expanded, and that's all we're asking for is expansion.
But we're an appointed board and he's not. So that's where, I think the argument now, whether we could be expanded based on that opinion from 2009, it looks like they did kind of expand on what was in the charter. And they dealt with a matter, but they said because it was not addressed, that it could be done, which is why I think an attorney general position would probably be wise. Another issue here is in case Indian Rocks Beach sought to, they have 2 charter officers, the city clerk and the city treasurer, and the city commission wanted to just abolish those 2 positions by ordinance. And there is a provision in 166.031 subsection 5 that allows governing bodies of municipalities by unanimous vote to eliminate municipal departments. And the argument they made is that since the clerk and the treasurer head departments, that's all we're doing is getting rid of those departments. And the attorney general said, no, that's different. You're actually trying to get rid of a charter officer that's in the charter. That's not just eliminating a department. And they said they couldn't do it. Now, I don't know if that really applies here because they didn't really change the position of the auditor because I believe his job descriptions are relatively the same. He just has some additional responsibilities and really it's just a lot of it's procedural. I think people could always go to the auditor in the past and say, we feel there's misfeasance or malfeasance. And he would investigate it and try to find, inefficiencies or cases of fraud and try to bring those. Now, there are, protections for the complainant. There are strict procedures with timelines that have to be followed. So I don't think I would almost argue it doesn't really expand his authority. I think he kind of had the authority to begin with. So I think that's one issue we've raised with the inspector general is that we think he's doing a good job. We're not trying to take his job in any way. And I think in a lot of the work that he does, we're not equipped to do anyways. is going through contracts and determining, inefficiencies and all that. That's not what we do. We don't want to do that. And I think that's concern. I think at the beginning, there were some concerns that this was becoming a territorial fight. And I think we've made it very clear. We're not looking to take any turf from the Inspector General. We just want to take that area that's just sitting there unclaimed. And because we think we're appropriate to do it. Because I don't think there's anybody else within the city that they all fall within the city. And if I can, just question is, why is it, the Inspector General doesn't have authority over the city commission? Why is that? Our Inspector General is accredited. He is accredited by, we have listed in the some national association. We also have in our ordinance that that the city Inspector General is required to follow the standards. Here it is. The standards is as promulgated by the Association of Inspectors General. Those standards do have a provision dealing specifically with organizational placement, where you have to find where in the organizational chart does the Inspector General go, and he only has authority below. Since the Inspector General can be hired or fired by the City Commission, he goes there. And if he were to try to cover the City Commission, he'd be in violation of the standards. We'd lose the accreditation and we'd be in violation of the ordinance. So that's the reason why he goes below that level.
So John, what you're saying is no inspector general of any city in the state of Florida has the authority.
No. Sitting in Tallahassee, we do not.
Okay, but in some other places they do, over the elected officials.
Yeah, there's the standards that are put forward by this association say there have to be like safeguards, so the people that are being investigated can't retaliate against the Inspector General. Like, I'll give a great example in Florida, like a state agency level. The governor appoints a chief inspector general, and the chief inspector general appoints the inspector generals for each agency. So they can investigate the secretary because the secretary can't touch him. So that's how you do that. Jacksonville, I'll be honest, I don't know what they do over there, but it does state that they have authority over everybody.
So you have precedent in the state of Florida, i.e. Palm Beach, where by ordinance, the ethics board has the ability to do whistleblower investigations of elected officials.
Yes, they're the appropriate local official for receiving a whistleblower complaint. And like I said, a case out of Miami, I think we're accepting a whistleblower complaint whether we want to acknowledge it or not in some cases. If somebody makes a misuse of public position and they've essentially claimed misfeasance or malfeasance, then they get fired because they brought a complaint to us, do they have the ability to file suit under the whistleblower statute? I think a good argument can be made that they do. So what would be helpful is if we had these procedures in place for ourselves, they wouldn't be able to file a lawsuit until they work their way through us. Whereas I would say now, I think they could file a complaint with us and file a complaint in circuit court on the exact same day. So that's kind of where we are in that regard.
And as it stands right now, no one can file a whistleblower complaint against an elected official because there is no appropriate board here body to hear
They could file a circuit court.
within the city.
Yeah, the administrative remedies wouldn't be available.
And there's nothing to stop an elected official from retaliating against an individual right now.
No, under circuit court, they can make a retaliation.
Within the city.
Yeah, within the city, they can make but I mean, the statute tells them that you shouldn't do it. Or else we're gonna get you in circuit court. So I mean, there are remedies available in court, but not remedies within the city.
And isn't that a gap that this board exists for? Aren't we here to say things like that, to act on it as efficiently as we can?
I don't know if that would say that's our purpose or intent, but it's an area we could fill. I don't think that was the intention when we first came about, but as we've looked into this and we've seen that, I guess it's okay to say some people are fearful to bring complaints. Some people have come to us and said, look, I don't really want to talk to you, but there are issues, but don't quote me. And You never saw me.
That's a genuine and real fear. I can tell you in law enforcement. A lot of people want to walk into the internal affairs unit within the very same building and department that an officer took some sort of misconduct towards them. So it makes sense that people fear that. And I think as a board, we have responsibility to try to fix that.
Yeah, and you don't really have to look at it as a fault in the city or anything else. That's just organizational development.
Sure.
If you don't have the right checks and balances, then there's a hole in what you're doing. And it can create that kind of fear. It's a natural occurrence. And that's why I said at the beginning, our focus is just to find a way to fill that gap. If somebody come up with something that takes care of that, then the board should be just as happy. But the idea that you have this gap and you have these powerful figures who could do it just because is enough to be concerned about. It has nothing to do with who's in office. It's just if you study organizations, organizational psychology, then you know that certain things need to be in place regardless of who you trust or don't trust.
And it would seem to me all the players, including the elected officials, would want the very same thing we're talking about. Right?
They haven't said so yet.
Well,
We haven't asked, we haven't asked them.
that's my perception.
Yeah,
If you're an elected official, you want this thing in place.
The positive part is that we went to them and they told us to get with the Inspector General, which we've done. So to that extent, they were receptive. We just need them to continue to be receptive. That would be.
It seems to me that basically this organization's been trying to do this for a long time. We almost got to the point of a vote. We were asked to make a tweak for the Inspector General, made the tweak, almost got to a vote, and then the city attorney came out with an advisory opinion that there may be a statute that prevents you from doing this. When I read that opinion, I thought, oh, we're back on our heels. Then after I saw these and saw 3 other cities are doing it too, what's the benefit to us to wait 2 months, ask for an advisory opinion, which is kind of a black hole at the AG's office, and then maybe 6 months after that, get something back saying, hey, you guys actually have this power. And then we go back to the commission and say, hey, can we do this? And they say, no, we didn't like the idea the whole time. Can't we still say to the commission, hey, your attorney says this isn't okay. Our attorney thinks it might be. And if you need to tell these other 3 cities they're wrong too, and will you guys vote on it? And they might vote and say, we're not doing it because our city attorney said it's illegal and we're not going to vote to do something. Or they might say, we're not going to do it just because we don't like it. But if they all say we're not doing it because the city attorney said we shouldn't, and then we've got this pending ethics opinion coming out and 6 months later it falls in our favor, we can go back and say, hey, you should have. But why should we wait to ask them to vote on the issue until we get an ethics opinion if we're now backed by 3 other cities?
I think you had your hand on.
No,
Oh.
but I mean, I agree with the sentiment because the charter is general enough, I think, to allow for that, and having that support from 3 other cities, I mean, it does support the idea that we could have a dual approach. And that way we don't lose time.
I think we're gonna lose a little time regardless, and I'm not saying it's probably gonna be, it's either gonna be August, September. I don't remember how long they're gonna be on vacation, but they're getting ready to go on vacation. So we'll have to wait till they come back.
Well, I would also state, I think we could walk and chew gum. I think we could ask for it to come back and ask for an AG opinion as well. So if we, once we get an Attorney General opinion back, if we're still where we are, at least we have something we could work with. And I think it's beneficial too, because if we get the ability to process these things and then later it's determined we don't have it, Naples doesn't have it, Miami-Dade doesn't have a pump, who cares about them? I care about us. And does something blow up in our face? So it might be helpful just to have for our own protection, because we don't want to get something if we shouldn't have it. I think it's beneficial to the city, provide those administrative remedies, so people aren't just running straight to court. And I think we are authorized because the charter is extremely broad in our powers. So, but that's up to the board. I could, like I said, I could come back in August and have a resolution and an opinion. you could say, you know what, we don't want to go that route, and then we don't have to do it, but it takes some time to prepare that. So I'd like to have some direction today so I could work on it for the next 2 months and come back in August.
Just to follow,
Ernie had his hand up too.
A couple of things. First of all, your idea of bringing it to the city commission initially, from experience that I've seen, the city commission very rarely goes against the city attorney. Happens. And one pattern I've seen with the city attorney's opinion is she looks to Florida statute, and if it's covered there, if people can go to court as a remedy, then we don't need it here, which really flies in the face of the whole purpose of the ethics board being here and why people voted for it in 2014. That was her response to things like the redefinition of lobbyist. Her view was that it was already covered in state statute. And it may be, but I think the city employees would rather go to Dwight to make a complaint rather than go to the Florida Ethics Commission. And that's really why we're here, I think. Those are my comments, and I do think that an attorney general's opinion would be beneficial.
am I correct in thinking that if somebody brings a whistleblower within the city, they can have some anonymity and keep on the job during that process? But if they're sitting there deciding, should I blow the whistle on what I just saw, and their options are hire an attorney and file a public lawsuit, or just keep going along to get along, is that correct? If we had something in place, there could be anonymity, but when the city says, we don't have a whistleblower program for you because you're blowing the whistle on somebody too high, their option is only to go hire a lawsuit or hire a lawyer. The lawyers do it on contingencies. It's not like they're having to pay for it, but so when we say go to the courthouse, we're saying expose yourself. So it is like, it's not really whistleblower protection if it's filing a public lawsuit. That's just suing somebody.
Well, another way of saying the same thing you just said is regarding any employee of the city or any manager or any leader, we'll protect you from retaliation. But if it's an elected official, we won't. That's essentially what you just said.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, correct me
And
if
not
I'm
just
wrong,
one.
but is that this current situation?
Current situation. And my comment was, I think just by the discussion here, we're all on the same page. And so I don't know why we need to wait till August to vote to say that we are taking a stand on this and this is what we want to do. In the meantime, instruct him to get that AGO, because I think the AGO, based on the precedent that's already we're seeing, it's going to be hard to make a decision that we won't like, because it's going to impact so many other entities. So I think we need to make a statement. To me, this is ridiculous. I'm
Well,
sorry.
One thing I was thinking too is that I would venture to say that the commission probably also doesn't want to vote on this issue, because depending on what they may vote, they may be seen in a different light, whether they vote for it or whether they vote against it, then it looks like they love the power. So I think it also, they're probably glad this came out because they can just say, oh, well, that, or got taken off the agenda. So yes, but I think it's still, I agree that I think it's still a void and we need some sort of option. Because if they're not going to take action on it, even if we do ask them again to do it, then I think other people need to have the option for sure.
One thing, so I think I may have mentioned in my opinion, the charter does provide us, we could propose ordinances to the city commission. And the language says that such legislative proposals shall be filed with and considered by the city commission. So those of you that are lawyers know the word shall is a significant one. So there is no discretion. They have to consider it. What's missing from this language is when. So I think, so even though it said, well, we need to move forward, we just need to have them hear it. Sure, but there's nothing in the charter that says when that would happen. Could happen 5 years from now. So if the board wanted to move forward with an opinion today, I think we might be able to just vote on it today.
And then pursue the AGO as another.
You're saying doing those
in our.
both concurrent?
We'd be voting to authorize you to file for an AG opinion and to draft up whatever.
Yeah, you wouldn't have time to come back and look at my opinion before then. But if you feel like I would do a pretty good job, we could just move forward and I
You
would,
do in a pinch.
yeah, I'll do a pinch, yeah, exactly.
And my intent on suggesting that is just to get the wheels rolling.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And if there's delays that we can't control, that's one thing, but this is a delay we can control by taking action right now, and that would be my recommendation, my motion. He said my motion.
So in addition to the AG opinion, what was the other thing you wanted?
That he's gonna go ahead and pursue his, I don't know what you're calling it.
Advisory opinion?
Yeah.
The Attorney General's opinion.
Yeah. Good, that's what we said.
So-
You recommended waiting to vote till August,
Mhm.
when you started. My question, why did you?
But I'd have a resolution that we would have something we could present to them to say, this isn't just one or two members of the staff, this is the majority of the board
Right.
requesting this.
It's basically saying you have to vote on a resolution. It can't be just,
Or you could just vote on a motion, then you have to have minutes. I would have to submit unapproved minutes with it. It doesn't say whether they have to be approved minutes, it just says minutes, we'll send it, see what they say. They may start processing and say we need something more updated once the minutes are approved.
and you're taking off in January, so.
July.
July.
I mean,
July.
yeah, but I was trying to change. Yeah,
Yeah,
July.
another J.
I tried to slide this. No, you're taking off in July, so that's why we were saying August. He would bring it back in August and with the resolution, the whole bit, so that he had the documentation to properly, because they don't necessarily have to see it. So it's dotting the i's and crossing our t's, so they know that we at least taking care of the foundationally what we need to give them in order for them to hear it. Did I say that right?
Maybe.
Would part of that include a draft ordinance?
No, I would just have questions.
Okay.
Well, we've already done that, a draft ordinance.
Well, we do, yeah, we do. But I would probably want to tailor these questions specifically to issues related to 166.021. Like I would say, are we at a point of board when we're not solely appointed by the city commission? Only one of our members is. I think we probably are, but we could do multi-part questions. That's something that's worth considering. And then this whistleblower charter, I'd probably want to sit down and take a crack at it, but
So let me retract what I said. What you're saying now, you come back to me, is whether we vote now or whether you vote in August, there won't be a delay. The complete package will be in place that you're gonna present to us in August. Correct?
no, I think we could file it now. But you wouldn't, well, whenever I get the opinion done. But then you wouldn't get to see the opinion before I sent it off.
So they can do a resolution before you finish.
We could just do a motion today, and like the motion you had made, just vote on it. And then once the minutes are drafted, we could submit that and see if that's sufficient without being adopted or approved by the board at the August meeting. They may come back and say, well, it says we need the minutes to have actually been approved after the fact to show.
Well, I was gonna say, what is the general consensus as far as, would you like to lay eyes on it before it went to the AG's office? Or do you feel like we've talked about it and we have a good idea what's gonna be in the advisory opinion and you would want it to go before laying eyes? Because that's the bigger thing, is one is just to give him direction to do it. The other is to see it and then approve what we hand in.
My understanding is we'll still see it before it goes, correct?
We just wouldn't have a public forum though to be able to make changes to it.
I think they're perfectly capable of teeing this question up to the AG. My question would be, without us having to look at it again, I don't think we're gonna have any corrections. My question would just be, when we do ask for the opinion, can we also let Jacksonville and Naples know that we asked? Because I would think their lawyers would start filing stuff with the AG saying we haven't been doing it wrong for a decade. This is our legal.
With them a couple of months ago, so we have pretty good working relationships with the other commissions.
And probably professional heads up to say, hey, if this turns out wrong, this could.
Might be necessary.
Right.
Right. I'm moving
So-
to Georgia, yes.
Yeah, so, okay.
So what's the official motion?
It's the official motion.
Motion to authorize Mr. Reed to request an attorney general's opinion to see whether the city attorney's opinion is accurate, that we're an appointed board and don't have authority without a charter amendment to take on whistleblower protection. Or whether Jacksonville Naples and anybody else in the state that's done it differently is correct.
How does that sound, John?
I can work with that.
Anybody?
I would second that.
Okay. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that was more than a 2/3 majority. That was unanimous.
Good.
And I thank him for that because he had to do a lot of work, very short. And I give him a hard time. But I did tell him that he was the best attorneys I've ever worked with. Then he told me he already knew that. so.
I barely had to pay him for that.
Next
I mean,
agenda.
hold on, if I could. Let me look at my. I think it only deals with, if we're amending the bylaws, we have to do like a 2/3 waiver of the rules. I don't think that applies here. If you could maybe, do we have anything else? Can we move to the campaign refund, and if we need to come back, I'll tell you. But I think we should be fine, but let me just make sure we don't have a waiver of the vote that needed to take place.
Do we need to do management retribution and retaliation?
I think I
Oh, you're
kind of.
saying skip it while you look it up.
Well, no, I think I kind of addressed that. I said, we can't, we don't give those protections.
Yeah, the only thing he didn't say is what brought this up was that, in the language that Attorney Calhoun sent me, it said that retribution was strictly prohibited in the training language. And, after I started thinking about it, I asked John, I said, where are the teeth? Because employees are gonna ask me, where are the teeth? After we discussed it, we concluded that there is no remedy. You know, I've asked both folks in the city, I've asked folks retired from the city places. It appears there is no remedy for retaliation or retribution beyond whistleblower. And that's why I said the two are connected. And honestly, that's still not, whistleblower is not the end all for these issues.
I guess we do need to, because I didn't really address that. The retribution retaliation was in response to a motion Ms. Calhoun made at the end of the last meeting. What was it again? You were going to draft some language.
Yeah, it was some beautiful language.
It
yes.
was actually very well done. It was good. You should be a ethics lawyer. Yeah, it was good.
Working on it.
But then when we looked at it, we're like, we don't really have that ability. It's like if somebody brings a complaint to us, there's nothing that stops them from chopping their head off. So that, and then we kind of said, well, that kind of goes back to this whole other conversation we're having. So.
And I would say it's a larger conversation than that, and would like to keep it on our back burner, because whistleblower is such a high bar. So it wouldn't even cover a majority of complaints that would be received. And it's that chilling effect that we talked about, how important that is, so.
And just for the record, I'm not pointing fingers at the city. I'm saying structurally, from an organizational development standpoint, if you don't have the right things in place, then you can expect something to falter somewhere. That's what scientists say. It's not what I say.
Campaign contribution refund.
Sure. That's agenda item 10. Ms. Leverson Green and I did an SWOT analysis. We actually put the flip chart, did the whole thing and put them on my newly painted wall, and the paint didn't come off. And we went through, and if you look at the bottom there, in the strengths, we said people in the community can be heard. The program gives voters access to the political process, and then there's a refund. And then for opportunities, we said gives candidates access to contributions, establish ways for candidates to engage voters. And then we have access to media outlets and community organizations. Among the threats, we said large dollar contributions. A candidate is going to go after large contributions long before they consider that $25. Or then lack of interest by a candidate can be an issue. And then the weaknesses, we said the process is, that's mandated in the city charter is a little convoluted, but it's mandated by the city charter, so we have to stick to the process. We said it's hard to compete with the $1,000 maximum donation. It targets, to a degree, it targets an audience that may not have the $25 to give. Election candidates will pursue larger donation amounts. Refunding the maximum amount of $25 is not worth it to some people, and the public is unaware of the program. And I didn't ask you to do this, but is there anything else that, in looking at those, and is there anything that you think we left out that we might consider in any of these? Continue, what we did when we looked at this, we crossed out the things that we had no control over. We have no control, for example, over city charter. We have no control over the amount. Most places it's $50 to $100, $25. You know, we should be able to raise it for inflation, but it's in the city charter. And so we're stuck with that. The biggest thing we focus on is that the public is unaware of the program. So on the next page where it says, where it has strategies, first thing we said, we analyze strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats concerning the campaign contribution refund program. Through the analysis, we develop strategies for promoting the program. Our priorities are public awareness and incentives for participation. And with that, starting with communities, we will be available to community organizations to explain the benefits, whether it's League of Women City Voters, Ernie, Ms. Payne, you can help us with that. And neighborhood organizations will go out and explain the program and try to get them engaged and explain to them why it's a benefit. If you go on the Supervisor of Elections website, you already see they've given us a page on the campaign contribution refund program, so it's already there. We work with them on that. With regard to candidates, we will share with them the potential for engaging registered voters. We're going to put together a little kit for them, increasing voter participation, and explain how that can equate to votes for them, greater an expansion of their base as such. And then for voters, we will emphasize to voters their significance to the election process and demonstrate how their participation gives them access to the candidate could affect the outcome of the election and ultimately impact their concerns. So I did most of this, but that's what we came up with. I do this to her all day. Happy to have her. But this is what we were able to come up with as the two of us. Is there anything that you all want to add to this?
How will you track, how do you think you'd be able to track effectiveness
When you
of
say,
the strategies?
well, we have history to go on. To be honest with you, it's barely existed,
The program
the
itself.
program. So, I mean, we've already gotten two and we're excited about that. I mean, yeah. That's how sad it's been. If we, for example, if we get one or two candidates who really engage, that is a big success in itself. Because largely, if the candidates don't buy into it, nothing we do is gonna make a difference. So we'll look at that. We'll look at just the number of people that actually participate. We'll look at the number of organizations that allow us to come in. Just engaging people in the program, we can measure the depth of public awareness, how far we're able to go with that and what kind of response we get from that. Thinking about spending a little money on maybe a couple radio stations for a certain amount of months when they're doing most of their campaigning to get the word out and then see what the response is, because the response itself will be the biggest gauge. Did I answer your question? Okay. Did you have anything better in mind?
No.
Okay.
I just wanted to point out that we are making some having some effect in putting it out. Just a few weeks ago, I was contacted by a campaign manager of a local candidate. She had seen that there was some outdated things on the website referring to the previous election. Contacted Dwight and rectified quickly. And then you say you've received 2 applications already. So I think that's good. We've had good feedback from the Supervisor of Elections Office. I spoke with him a couple of years ago, or last year, coming up on the election then, and he was very open to doing whatever he could. I'm involved with the League of Women Voters. We also publicize this. We have candidate forums and publicize the refund program there. There's something else that I just thought, actually my wife thought about today. The League of Women Voters has voter registration drives, and we could provide information to the people as they're being registered to vote about the campaign. If we can have pre-printed information that can be handed out in all of these various forums, that would be.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to have some too at the university.
Okay. That'd be great. And then, when you talk about measuring it, one of the things is just voter participation. Because to an extent, you can see where people give money, because that's, they give to 3 different people because they just want to be liked by whoever wins. And, but then there's a population that is not engaged and not involved. So, part of success is getting those people engaged. So I think there will be some ways to measure it. And the young lady that called Ernie called him after I gave her some wrong information, and I had to call her back and correct it. But we were, at the very moment that she called, we were working on it. So we were able to, that's why we were able to get it updated very quickly. It is updated on the webpage.
One question I had, I know a lot of people think the $25 refund is no big deal, but people that are spending $1,000, but it's the lower income people that there's the target audience. But how long does it take after application for the refund to come in?
Our goal is 45 days. We could probably do it sooner, but here's what we do. They're supposed to give us a receipt, all the candidates, so we can make sure that these are valid receipts. But the other thing is they have to post it every month, Supervisor Elections website, and we try to go there to verify it. Then it doesn't take long.
Yeah, I was thinking there really should not be a need for a receipt since it is posted on the public website.
Charter says. The charter requires it.
I know we addressed it.
Yeah, the charter requires it. Well, I agree with you. The charter requires it. But that means they have to upload it and get rid of that. Maybe when we visit the charter, maybe we can do it without destroying it.
So would anyone like to make a motion to approve these strategies?
Second.
And Mr. Kelly seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Don't we have a follow-up question? What is the cap? What is the cap on the aggregate amount you could refund in any election cycle?
We won't reach it, but, and I think I cut the budget down to like, what, $500 or something? But as long as we have the money in our budget, right now, there is no cap.
Okay.
And I have no fear because the most we've done is 20. So we do 100. I mean, if you do 1,000, what's that, 25,000? So, yeah, I have a party on top of that.
You budgeted for that too.
Yes. Okay, agenda item 11 is to review a strategic plan. Every year we do a strategic plan. The reason I'm doing this now is because in August, I'm gonna ask you to come back and do an evaluation of me. You have to do that every year. I'm gonna ask you to do it in August. We always do it late, so this time we're gonna do it on time. And what you see in this report, what's in red is what I am advancing for next year, changes to this for next year. What you see in blue is what we accomplished. I won't go through all this now, but you can. We'll include some of this in the annual report because it will show what the board saw as goals and how what the board did to meet those goals. That's what this represents. For instance, on page 3, it says network with other offices, ethics officers throughout conferences, through conferences and personal contact. And it says the ethics officer attended an ethics conference in Montreal, Canada, with over 400 other participants from across the nation and Canada. The conference was educational, increased network potential, and then said the ethics officer and board attorney attended an ethics conference in South Florida. Conference was informative and educational, increased network potential, and it's very active because both of these conferences have contributed to even some of the things we talked about here today. But we go throughout here, say what's in blue represents what we accomplished, and what's in red is what we propose changing. I will bring this back to you with the changes for the next fiscal year. And we always do it 3 years out so we can have a vision of where we're going and not just what we're doing. So we always do it 3 years out. So I'll bring that back to you in August or September for approval. So you have time to look at that. Just wanted to explain it. I don't know if I asked for a vote or not, but I don't really need one. I just need you to look at it, but the next time I bring it back to you.
I had one thought on that one that was under strategic priority 2. We talked about this being the ethics guide to basically everybody, including vendors and contractors.
Yes.
And there was a recommendation to remove the vendors and contractors and leave they're not within the board's jurisdiction, so we
Right.
couldn't really do anything to them anyway.
Right.
Is there any benefit in still giving them our packet every year so they know these are the rules that the guy who you're liaisoning with at the city to know he can't accept a gift or whatever it might be that you're thinking about offering them, and also kind of show them that we take it seriously, that if you're contracting with us, here's your packet, just like you worked here.
I think what I would recommend there is we create a way for them to be able to access the information without imposing.
Yeah.
Since we don't have authority, but if they want to know, we can let them know it's there. Something I can work with the city maybe on something like that. They're probably more amenable to that since we don't have authority. Any other questions with regard to strategic plan? Did y'all read it? That was your own.
Read everything.
Sure. And I appreciate that. But that's all I have on that, Madam Chair. Did you want to come back to something?
No, we're fine on that other issue.
Okay.
Any directives for
Directives?
anything else we want them to take a look at and present back to us the next time? We've definitely got the whistleblower protection.
Is there anything we want to do about the public comment on the lobbying issue today?
It's funny you brought that up. I wanted to talk about it. I'm the kind of person that I'm on this board for a reason. I look at our mission. The mission is pretty clear here where it says, let me see what it says. To promote the actual and perceived integrity of our city government and to prevent unethical conduct before it occurs. We've known what we heard today from the speaker going on. It can lead to unethical behavior. It can lead to a perception of an organization that doesn't have high integrity. And I think we, knowing that, have a responsibility to do something about it. I don't know what that action is, but I'm a firm believer in James 4:17 that says if a person knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, it's just as bad as they do something wrong. So I think we got to do something. If I'm the only one that feels this way, I'll buckle down, but I'm just shocked that there isn't people, again, on all sides of the city, including elected officials, that would want more transparency so that the perception of unethical and improper behavior would be out there. It's out there.
The fact is, we did it. We did what we could. We spent a lot of time, past couple of years. Drew up draft ordinances, redefining lobbyists. If you go back and see it all, it was quite extensive. And presented it to the city commission. We had an ethics workshop prior to that where they all got together and talked it all out. That's why where the whistleblower thing came up and that direction to work with the inspector general. And we discussed all the other issues, the lobbyist regulations, and presented it all to the city commission. And basically, they shot down just about every significant thing we asked for.
And so now that board that shot that down,
They're still in office.
they're all still in office. And
Were we asking for things like tighter than Jacksonville, Naples? Could this be another situation where we just go look and see what everybody else in the state's doing and try and do the same?
yeah, I think that's a valid, what, for those of you who've done work in this in the
You would
past, yeah, is this common?
We
Is this common across the state of Florida? What's going on in our city?
think, John, you presented that, didn't you?
This is regarding the lobbyists.
A comparison with the other cities, with Jacksonville. I know Jacksonville came up.
That was a long time ago. I don't remember.
Yeah, the workshop was in March of 22. And
The bottom line is one of our challenges is the perception that we're extending our role. Part of what we have to overcome when it comes to the relationship of the city is history. I keep hearing about things that happened before I got here. And honestly, I'm tired of it because I think it's just excuses for bad decisions. But every time we bring something up, it's about something that happened 4 years ago. Or it's about what would be considered special interest. And that's why I say we have to make it clear that when we're voicing ourselves, it's the board voicing themselves. As far as lobbying itself is concerned, that's a national issue. The conference, the Kogel Council, and I forgot the name of the organization, but that particular conference, they don't just meet annually. They have discussions about this in particular at least once a year. They have a mini conference to discuss this. And then at the conference, we report on lobbying because it's a national issue. It's not just us. Part of it, the language, I don't remember the language we had. I know one concern that I have, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they raised the fee from, what was nothing?
it's 25.
25 to 500.
Yeah, $25 to $500. And I don't know what the logic is on that because, that would discourage people from registering. I didn't know it was as low as was reported. But at the same time, I just don't know what we can do because part of the push is against us as an organization. And change is change, and people don't like change if they're comfortable. And so it is, I don't have an answer. I'm not saying give up on it, but I don't have an answer.
This whole thing in ethics is the perception of impropriety.
Mhm.
It's more important than reality. Perception of impropriety here, the perception could be, not from me, but from someone else, is that fee was raised at 500 specifically to discourage people from registering when they can just be a consultant.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
that seems like-
evidence is there.
Seems like a natural conclusion to me.
Wilcox-
And at the end of the day,
It's extensive.
that's literally what has happened. So again, I'm going to ask again, and tell me if it's improper. Some people in the audience happen to have a background in this. How common is our situation? I'm going to ask that question again. Is our situation this thing calling them consultants and getting around it and then no transparency whatsoever in that process? Is that common around the state and cities? Is it the norm? Or are we unique in that we're doing it that way? And I don't know if any of you
I don't know, we could
don't even have a.
Do the other lobbying ordinances have a communications or consultant loophole?
We can ask.
Could we begin that research maybe and to start taking us down the road of addressing this again, because you're right. the board tried before. Well, I used to play baseball, and when I struck out once, I did not come up to bat again. That's just the way I am. And if I think this is the right thing to do, and I'm willing to step back if the rest of the board says, no, we should pursue this. But at least at the process of looking at other cities, looking at other counties and seeing if this consultant loophole is a common thing. And it's not unique to our city. If it's common and everybody's doing it, doesn't make it right. But at least then we can have a better understanding of where we go if we're going to move forward on it.
And the chair is not here, but I think one thing in our discussion we've said is the ordinance basically says that we have the right to present it and they have the right to reject it. And then we also have to keep that in mind because the way the ordinance is written ultimately is their decision. When it comes to things national, that's what people run into a lot because the same people they're policing make this decision. And you do want some kind of balance, and I don't know how you really get it, but the way the ordinance is written, we can recommend anything within certain limits, and they can say yes or no to anything within certain limits. And so I think at the time, our discussion was, we went through the process, we presented it, and they voted. And I just want to put that out there because that was part of the discussion.
It seemed like if we were going back to the well, we'd have to do it with some angle in the future of, since you guys voted, this is what happened. Nobody's registering anymore, but business is still going on.
That part about the registration fee was really separate from anything that we recommended. That was not, it was an idea of the treasurer clerk to come back. He was examining his processes. And he saw that really what is the point of a $25 fee? So he recommended to the city commission, let's eliminate the fee altogether. Maybe we'll have more registrations. That was brought up at the city commission. He first made that recommendation. The city commission came back to him and said, wait a minute, that you can't just present this to us just out of the blue. We need to bring this back and vote on it and discuss it. So at the next, I believe the next city commission meeting was put on the agenda. And a number of the city commissioners were saying, well, let's stick it to the lobbyists. And what, $25 isn't enough. Let's make it $250 or let's make it $500. And that's what they eventually voted on, 500, without really looking at the ramifications of it. And what we've seen is I've been looking at the same registrations that Mr. Wilcox has done. I counted in 2022, something like over 30 registrations of lobbyist registrations. And right now there are 4. After in 2023 is when January 2023, that went into effect, the $500 fee. And since then, there's been 4 registrations. So you see the effect, but that was not part of our original package at all. But yeah, I would agree that we ought to do some research as far as what has been done regarding lobbyists.